Hello everyone, I'm Bill Wolpin, the Editorial Director of American City & County, and welcome to today's webinar. Before we get into a little bit of housekeeping, I'd like to first thank our sponsor, DocuSign, for making this event possible. Now a few words about our webcast technology. This webinar platform allows you to control the way you watch the event. For example, you can customize your webinar console. You can move windows around by dragging on the title bar or resize your windows by clicking on the lower right corner of any window. Notice the toolbar at the bottom of your console. Those buttons allow you to open and close widgets on your screen. You can also use social media while you're watching. If you hear something interesting, tweet it to your followers using the Twitter widget. If you experience difficulties with the audio or advancing the slides, simply press your F5 key to refresh your webinar console. We appreciate your feedback, so please take a moment to answer the short feedback form on the left side of your webinar console. Finally, to make this webinar more valuable to you, please ask questions. You don't have to wait until the end to put your questions in the queue. Just type them in as they occur to you. That way, the speakers will have more time to consider their answers. And speaking of our speakers, let me introduce them. Mauricio Pinto is an Enterprise Account Executive for State and Local Government at DocuSign. He joined DocuSign as part of their acquisition in May of ARX and its flagship CoSign digital signature product. At ARX, he also managed the state and local government practice. He began his career as a CPA, worked as a financial controller for 10 years, and for the last 15 years has focused on sales and marketing of software applications. He has written several white papers on using technology to increase efficiency in organizations, and he's been interviewed by numerous publications such as Integrated Solutions Magazine, For the Record, and Digital Publishing Solutions. Joining Mauricio is Ron Singh, the Engineering Automation Manager and Chief of Surveys for the Oregon Department of Transportation. He directs the agency's Engineering Automation Program that's responsible for the research, development, and training for all automation aspects of surveying, design, and construction. He also directs the agency's surveying program. Ron's been in a leadership role in the transportation engineering automation area for more than 25 years and has been with the Oregon DOT for 38 years. Our third speaker is Teresa Schaeffler, who joined the Nevada Department of Transportation in 2011 after 25 years in the private sector. Teresa currently manages two sections at NDOT, contract services responsible for low bid procurements, and process innovation, providing private sector enterprise innovations to the public sector process problems. In 2013, Teresa led a DocuSign proof of concept pilot concentrating on automating the contract award and execution process. After the successful pilot, NDOT implemented DocuSign throughout the procurement process. The NDOT DocuSign project was recently selected as one of the 6 finalists for the 18th Annual Cashman Good Government Award, which recognizes strong, continuing, and consistent effort to spend taxpayers' dollars wisely and efficiently, and for the effective, open, and accountable practice of creating a user-friendly government. With that, let me turn this over to Mauricio. Mauricio, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Bill. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. This marriage between the leader in the digital signature space and the leader in the electronic signature space is great for customers, it's great for prospects, but it has understandably raised some questions about the difference between the solutions and technologies and about the direction that the product will take. So we are very pleased to have with us today a couple of guest speakers. They each use the separate solutions, so we're going to be able to receive their input on how and why they use the products. And for my part, I want to set the stage and give you a quick little brain dump. I want to very generically cover the basics about the law, about the available technologies. I'll actually review the 3 most likely solutions you'll probably consider. And we will actually include some pros and cons about each of the solutions. We'll obviously have some input from our guest speakers, and we're going to allow some time for Q&A. So let's get started with the basics. The same federal and state laws that make electronic documents legal also make electronic signatures legal. There's e-sign at the federal level, there's UITA at the state level. Even if your own state has its own version of this Uniform Electronic Transactions Act, it very likely mirrors the language of these regulations, which defines an electronic signature as a symbol, a sound, a process that links the signer to the signed record. So clearly that covers a lot of ground. So the easiest thing for you is to think of electronic signature as the umbrella term for every available solution. And clearly this includes things like taking a picture of your signature and incorporating that into a document. We've all done that. It also includes signing at the grocery store on an e-pad and going to a website and checking I agree. But it also includes the three solutions that we're going to focus on today. And so we're going to get into a little detail about that. The regulations, with their very loose definition of electronic signature, theoretically means that you can use any solution that you want. But the fact that it's legal doesn't necessarily keep you out of trouble. To stay out of trouble, and not just today, we're talking about being able to prove certain things 10, 15, 20 years from now, you'll want to select solutions that accomplish the first three bullets on my slide. You want to be able to guarantee the identity of the signer. You want to maintain the integrity of the signed record, meaning that it should be evident if any changes have occurred to the document after signing. And you want to avoid repudiation. This is also referred to as proving intent to sign. These first three are the minimum CYA criteria, and you want to make sure that they survive for the life of the electronic document. But I've also added an important and I think practical criteria, and that's portability of the signed record. You can have a solution that proves the identity and the intent and the integrity, but if you can't easily share the signed record and have someone else independently verify the signature and who signed and when they signed, it loses value. So we're going to look at the pros and cons of three types of solutions today. For the sake of simplicity, I'm just going to use ECM, Enterprise Content Management, but really this includes any kind of document management, record management, case management, contract management that you may have in-house. We'll define and we'll talk about digital signature, which are also known as certificate-based signatures, and we're going to take a look at SaaS solutions, which is conveniently also signature as a service. Let's start with the document management solutions, and some of you have more than one, and quite often these will offer some kind of electronic signature functionality. These solutions are very secure. They offer a lot of functionality, including workflow. Once you log in, they track everything you do. They track every document you look at, every change you make, every person that a document is routed to. And you can use annotations or images or fields to document your approval or signature. The disadvantages of these types of solutions are that you have to be logged in order to verify the approval or the signature. You can't really send the signed record to anyone else and have them independently verify who signed and when they signed. The other important thing is that you've all probably changed your system at some point. So you have to think about how you're going to verify the signature in 5 or 10 years for something that you documented in another system. And also, not every department has a document management or ECM system, right? Or even if you do, not every prospective signer may be a user of that system. So the obvious conclusion here is that you start out by looking at what you have first already in-house, what kind of electronic signature functionality it offers, before looking at other options. The next category that you want to consider is digital signature, but to be clear, I'm starting with what most people think digital signature is. It's the old-fashioned way to deploy it, what I refer to as decentralized digital signature. I am going to show you the new way to do this, but let's start with this. The way it works is that signers are issued unique signing certificates. Okay? This also means that you need to know the signers and do identity proofing of those signers before you issue the certificate. When they go to sign, they have to once again authenticate their identity, and then the system will take the information from their certificate and embed it into the document itself. If there are any changes after signing, there is immediate visible evidence of the change. The signature is actually invalidated. The other nice thing is that the verification is non-proprietary, which means that it's not done by the vendor. If you sign an Office document, it's Microsoft that will verify the information. If you sign a PDF, it's Adobe, or at most any mainstream PDF viewer will do the verification. You can obviously send it to anyone else for verification. And the other very nice thing is that it is natively supported by mainstream applications. Microsoft, obviously, Adobe. There's a reason why engineers gravitate towards digital signatures. It's natively supported in AutoCAD and MicroStation and even Lotus Notes. The traditional digital signature does have some disadvantages. The first and foremost one is that you have to purchase the certificates from a third-party certificate authority, and further, these are distributed on a one-to-one basis to the signers. They're installed either on their PCs, their laptops, USB keys, or smart cards. Right? This is not a big deal if you're talking about a few signers, but it gets cumbersome and problematic as you roll out to hundreds or even thousands of users, which some of you would have. The other disadvantage is that you have to renew them every year or every 2 years. It doesn't include integration to Active Directory, which for you means two things. One is managing the users. You'd like to do it centrally from within AD. And the second thing is that when somebody goes to sign, ideally they take advantage of their Active Directory credentials rather than having to learn another password. The other disadvantage is that it's not very practical for unknown signers. The whole point here is that you do identity proofing before you issue the certificates to the users. And finally, if you think about it, if the signing key lives on your laptop or on a USB key, then it's not going to let you sign with your phone or even with mobile apps or web apps. So the takeaway here, guys, is if you're going to use digital signatures, there's a better way than to do the old decentralized approach. The better way is what I call centralized. Today you can purchase digital signature solutions that are completely managed centrally. Everything is installed and managed in a network-attached server. It actually converts you into a certificate authority, which means that you don't have to purchase certificates from a third party. But if that's your preference, it supports that as well, or some of you have your own internal certificates that you want to use, and it will support that. It does have integration with Active Directory, so you can manage all your users from within a security group for signers and AD, and obviously people can use their AD credentials when they go to sign. And since the signing key lives in this centrally accessible server, you can use it to sign from any PC, any device. You can sign with web apps, you can sign with mobile apps. And the final important point to keep in mind is that the documents never leave your domain. And for some of you, that's important. It does have some disadvantages. Again, it's not practical for unknown users, even with this new centralized solution. And the other important thing is that it doesn't include workflow. It assumes that you're taking advantage of your document management workflow. So if you're using SharePoint or Oracle or Alfresco or Documentum, that's what you would use to route the documents with. The third type of solution that we're looking at is the signature as a service, or SaaS. There are different vendors with different levels of functionality, so this can serve as somewhat of a checklist for you as you're doing your due diligence. The first key advantage of SaaS is that it does have workflow. And I would encourage you to drill down into the functionality that's offered by the vendors you look at. Is it only about getting the document from A to B? Can you incorporate a whole series of reviewers and signers? Can you do sequential? Can you do simultaneous routing? Can you do a mix of the two? That's important. Unlike digital signatures, where you have to do the ID proofing before you ever issue a certificate, with this type of solution you can verify the identity at the time of signing. So once again, you want to investigate what options are offered to perform this type of authentication. You want to make sure that they have some kind of mechanism to ensure that the integrity of the signed document is protected. If there are any changes, will it be immediately visible and evident? Clearly, the documents are portable. You can send them to anyone else and they'll be able to confirm the identity and the time of signing. But the other thing you want to look at is, what is your legal proof? Ideally, the system should track the date and time for every action, from the moment the document was received to it being opened, viewed, completed, signed. All of this is important as you're looking at solutions. You're going to want to focus on the integrations that are available for the applications that you use on a daily basis. And the last thing I would encourage you to look at is to make sure that it is about more than just signature. You want to think about approvals and notifications, acknowledgments, and even data capture, as I mentioned earlier. If you're sending out forms, you want to have the ability for your signers to complete information and for you to be able to then access that information and even download it to your other systems. Even here, there are some disadvantages to consider. The most important one is that the end result will be a signed PDF regardless of what you start with. And particularly for the engineers in the audience, 100 megabyte architectural diagram is going to be a challenge for routing through a cloud-based system. So these are the considerations you want to keep in mind. If you work with a lot of unknown signers and you send documents out for signature and approvals and or data capture, you're going to want to focus on signature as a service. Think about human resources, contracts, legal, budgets. Think also about all the paperwork and forms that your constituents fill out. Right? How much paperwork does human services generate? These types of functions are ideal for the SaaS solutions. The end result of this marriage is that you now have available from one vendor both types of technologies, and we're going to continue to offer both solutions. I personally often demo both products to the same prospect, and they very likely may need both products for different departments. So this is an important message for you. As you can imagine, we're rapidly looking into trying to bring the two products closer together. Already, we've incorporated a system digital signature to ensure integrity for every document that moves through the DocuSign digital transaction management platform. If a change is made, the system signature will be invalidated. Already, we can offer as an option a one-off certificate creation for individuals as a transaction flows through the DocuSign DTM platform. And as far as the future, our vision is to be able to offer the routing and functionality of the DocuSign platform, but to let you sign with any certificate of choice. It can be your own certificate, it could be a third-party certificate, it can be a co-signed certificate. So that's the vision, but it is still a vision. But it's a very exciting one, and it bodes well for you folks. So that wraps up my presentation. I'd like to present Ron Singh. He's the Engineering Automation Manager and the Chief of Surveys at Oregon Department of Transportation. and he's going to share his experiences specifically with digital signature. Ron?
Thank you, Mauricio. For the audience, hello from Oregon. I'm not sure what time zone you're in, so I'll just say hello. And what I'm going to do is take you through why we deploy digital signatures. And in essence, I wanted to present that the perspective of my talk will be around digital signatures from an engineering perspective for the Department of Transportation in Oregon. So whatever rules we have in place in Oregon, whatever laws, that's why we particularly went the way we did. So to begin, I'm going to, in essence, describe our business and what aspects of our business that we plan or do actually use digital signatures in. So if you think of our mission as a DOT, our role is to develop, construct, maintain, and operate highways. And if you look at the long lifespan of a highway, which could be indefinite in most cases, the little blip that occurs within that long lifespan of the time when we construct a project is just a tiny little blip in that lifespan. And if you look at the major components of data and documents that we produce during that lifespan, I'm going to focus on the engineering aspects of it, as I mentioned. So that means we look at the survey, design, and construction aspects of that lifespan, and we produce a lot of engineering documents. I'm going to come back to the slide a little bit later, but that's generally what we're focused on, is the documents around the engineering efforts that we put in place. So in Oregon, the law requires that for all engineering work that we do, and that includes surveying and all the other aspects of engineering, that we place a seal on the product and we sign that product. So in the workflow that we go through in our typical DOT scenario is we go through planning, surveying, design, acquiring the land that we need, and then constructing the project. And then when we're done, we produce as-built plans, archive our documents, and we go into this operational maintenance phase. And then that life cycle continues through the long lifespan of a highway. So where we were in days past, for most of the history of our DOT, we were essentially producing hard copies, and I'd say we started into the digital world in somewhere around the mid-1980s. So in the hard copy era, we were producing, of course, hard copy documents. They were very easily identifiable originals. So when we produced something, it was easy to recognize the original from a copy. We had a very disciplined and managed structured filing system. And when we pulled documents out to do other work with it, the check-in, check-out procedures were pretty rigorous and well managed. And all of this, of course, depended upon wet signatures on hard copy documents. So what you're seeing in front of you is a typical set of plans, or just one sheet out of a plan set. And in the lower right corner is that seal and signature of the professional of record. And it was a wet signature on hard copy. So it could be Mylar, in the old days vellum, and all sorts of other types of physical hard copy sheets. And so wet signatures, essentially are handwritten, stylized version of the signer's name on a physical document. And its purpose was to not necessarily prove identity, but to show that the person has deliberated and agreed to the content of that document. So when we needed to prove identity, we typically went to a third-party notary to be able to prove that identity. And historically, legal concepts were recognized any sort of mark, as Mauricio mentioned during his talk. So when we get into the part of our DOT managed engineering piece of that tiny little project in that long life cycle, in the hard copy days, as I called it, prior to the 80s, our construction and surveying was pretty much traditional to where we had hard copy plans and specifications. The surveyors would go out and set wooden stakes in the ground to control and show the contractor and the construction equipment where to build and how deep to cut, etc. And the construction equipment itself was manually operated. So all of it was hard copy, paper, and manual construction. So I mentioned construction because that has changed dramatically. So in the digital era today, and actually since the mid-80s, if you look back at that diagram I showed you earlier of the highway lifespan, and that we produce a lot of engineering documents, now we produce, of course, the engineering documents, but also a lot of engineering data. And Oregon law requires us to seal and sign anything that we construct from. So we have the abilities today to essentially put data directly into heavy equipment, and I'm going to back up a slide here, put data into heavy equipment and build from it. So in this digital era stage, of course, our documents are now digital. They're really difficult to identify the original from a copy. They're complex documents, so we have maybe a number of documents that could be referenced to one, that the collection of many files may produce your one document that you're working with. We are also into the 3D world now, and so it's difficult to take 3D and flatten it out onto hard copies that we sign. These documents are difficult to manage. We don't really have a well-oiled machine of check-in, check-out procedures, and I suspect that's true of the industry across the nation and maybe even worldwide. We haven't quite reached that point of that discipline. And we are now struggling with the requirements of the law to wet sign things. So that was one of the reasons we sort of were pushed into this digital world. So construction automation is one of the driving factors for us. And what I'm going to show you is a video it is a 3D design that has been rendered with material types and colors and so on, and then animated. So what you're seeing really is it came from a original 3D design, but it's been animated for use in public hearings and so on. But the point I wanted to make was we no longer truly work in the flat 2D world. We are transitioning to something like this. We are not fully there yet. We still produce plans and specifications of hard copy, but this allows us to get into a whole different world where we take this data and feed it to automated construction equipment and so on. So today we have the abilities, and we are moving into this direction. We have been actually using automated machine guidance for a number of years, but we're using it for more and more applications. So you'll see automated machine guidance with all sorts of equipment, from dozers to paving machines to excavators to all sorts of things that are all controlled by 3D digital data. And so it essentially is pushing us into a world where digital signatures is now a problem for us and has been a problem for us for some time. So the signatures that we were doing with wet signatures really didn't bind the signer to the document because we weren't authenticating the signer itself. It didn't certify the integrity of the document. Somebody could have made changes to that hard copy and the signature and seal remained on it. So it was difficult to track that. Today the seals are typically cells in a CAD system. that people can copy, alter, and put on that drawing. And if somebody had actually created their stylized version of their wet signature in that cell, it would be very difficult to track. And the big thing for us is it hindered our ability to integrate this digital world we're moving into, all the way from surveying to that automated construction I was expressing a moment ago. So continued problems with the wet signatures. They worked well in the old days, but not anymore. And of course, we've talked about we've moved from hard copies into transmitting electronic documents and so on. To apply a wet signature, a lot of people have tried various things, like simply signing the paper copy and then scanning back that document into, let's say, a PDF and then archiving it. And really, it's problematic because it loses the native file format, loses all the embedded intelligence, took a lot of time, and really isn't necessary anymore. And so the solution, as we see it, is digital signatures. So the term digital signature, now I'll sort of skip through this because Mauricio talked about it quite a bit, but the main thing I wanted to focus on is it enables us to authenticate the document and the signer. So a digital signature essentially is to an electronic document that a handwritten signature was to a paper one, but a whole lot more because of the basic three pieces: signer authentication, document authentication and validation, and if you wanted, you could have encryption. We, in our workflow, aren't considering encryption. So I'll go through this quickly also because Mauricio has covered it to some degree, but it uses digital keys, validates the identity of the sender and the integrity of the document by the recipient. And it provides a greater degree of security than a handwritten signature, and the recipient can verify that they're looking at the right version of the right document when they need access to it. Digital signatures are very difficult to repudiate. It reduces paper handling, maintains your data in digital format, and enables us to get into this managed engineering data content management system. Without the digital signatures, it would make it very difficult for us. It's not new. It's been around for a long time. It's not an emerging technology and has been accepted in national and state systems. And it actually works quite well for us. We are still in the process of deploying it, but to create digital signatures, you need software. If you're using a digital signature component, you use signing certificate and then possibly a certificate authority. In the case of our DOT, we are our own internal certificate authority. So you want to avoid self-signed certificates by just going into Microsoft or different products and creating your own signature. And you really need to be relying on an independently verified system. And the system really should be able to tell the recipient that the document is valid, the person was authorized to sign it, and the third party verifies their identity. So a robust digital signature system must be really capable of identifying the person, make sure that it was done under the sole authority of the person, and that it was linked into a document in such a way that if somebody made a change, that the signature would identify that. So where are we in our efforts? I'm waiting for the slides to catch up here, sorry. Sorry, my slides are catching up here. So I'm going to back up a slide. So what's next for us? We are, pardon. We are deploying digital signatures across all of our engineering disciplines, and we are completing the deployment of our engineering data management system, and we are now starting to focus on digitally signing data rather than just documents. That will allow us to facilitate going from 3D design all the way into machine guidance systems. And that's where we are. And I'm going to introduce Teresa Schlafer from Nevada DOT, and she will take it from here. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me, both DocuSign. I always learn something new from these presentations, and this one is no different. I've written a few notes from Ron's presentation to talk to some implementation possibilities with our engineering groups. So thank you, Ron, for that. I'm going to go through my presentation pretty quickly to make sure that we have plenty of time for questions at the end. So we can always come back to some additional information. So the Nevada Department of Transportation started in 1917. It started with a general engineer and 20 convicts for convict labor. We had about $20,000 in funding that first year. In 1979, we officially became the Department of Transportation, and now we're an 1,800 employee and $1.25 billion a year agency. Nevada is the 7th largest state in the U.S. With over 110,000 square miles. And we have a lot of roadway miles, lots of bridges. We're headquartered in Carson City with 3 district offices and multiple remote and mobile locations. And I don't know if many of you have been through the state of Nevada, but when I talk remote locations, some of them are very, very remote. And so it was important that we found a solution for us that would work in some of our more remote locations. So what put us on the road to digital transformation and using electronic signatures is our director actually received a contract to execute from one of our regional transportation commissions, and he said, "Oh, this is great. You know, how can we use this?" And so we went to DocuSign and learned about what their solutions are, and we of course looked at a few others, but we stayed with DocuSign because of their mobile capabilities and making this available to all of our stakeholders, including our contractors and internal folks, and also the Federal Highway Administration. So we started out about 3 years ago with DocuSign, and we started out just did the pilot program in our contract services section, which does our low bid procurement. And we had an overall processing time of about 50 days. So that's what it would allow by specification. We averaged about 24, 25 days. And as soon as we implemented DocuSign and the electronic signature in our process, we went down to 4.8 days. So obviously a huge benefit in our processing time and working with our contractors. We also got really good at executing contracts. You'll see this is I-15, so Interstate 15. It got washed out last fall, or I guess it was last fall, and we had to obviously get this road back open and pretty quickly. So instead of the 4.8 days to execute a contract, we executed that contract in 55 minutes. So that was just, obviously the award through execution process, but I know a lot of you who are still using wet ink signatures, you know that to get a contract executed in 55 minutes is pretty darn amazing. So we were very pleased with that. And of course, we received all sorts of accolades for getting this freeway back open within 4 days. So from an event to actually back open, obviously not completely reconstructed, but back open within 4 days. So we, as soon as we got through our pilot phase, we started adding other processes in our low bid procurement. And so we started using the power forms that are available through DocuSign for things like our budget approval, our DBE goals, our pre-qualifications for our contractors, as well as all of our other workflows, approvals from internal sources, approvals from external sources, our BRAT, which is our bid review and analysis team. We do all of that through DocuSign now. And all of our concurrence and approvals to award, those are all done through DocuSign. We added all the other procurement processes, so quality-based procurement, our supply requisitions, our personnel requisitions, where we're using a lot of the DocuSign products, including the power forms. The power forms, I don't know if any of you have started using the DocuSign product, but the power forms are a really powerful tool to work through workflows and also gathering data from several different sources. So these are the things that we added to in the other procurement processes. But we're also using DocuSign now throughout the department for our personnel onboarding, travel requests, state airplane when people want to take trips on the state airplane. We do all of that through DocuSign. You can see all of the different pieces here on this slide that we're using DocuSign for. And now it looks like I'm going to be researching using the digital signature through DocuSign for some of our engineering offices as well. So we have been using DocuSign now pretty much in every division within the department. We're looking to start using it for redlining contracts and agreements. We're using it on more internal forms. Just recently, a couple of years ago, we were mandated to have all of our public-facing forms through a fillable form online, and we've done that with the power forms. So we've really integrated DocuSign into many aspects of the department. And so there's probably some questions on why an electronic signature rather than a digital signature. And it's mostly for ease of use, because there's so many tools within DocuSign that meets all of those standards for a verified document, verified signatures, all of those things that people are concerned about. Those are met through the DocuSign on the electronic signature side. Now I know that the engineering groups sometimes have a higher bar to reach, but for pretty much most transactions, our Attorney General's office found that the electronic signature was more than adequate. And then when you pair that with the DocuSign workflows, it just made it a very successful solution for us throughout the department. So, like I said, I was going to run through my presentation pretty quickly so that we would leave time for questions. So I will turn this over to, is it Mauricio? Are you going to be handling the questions for us, or?
I think Bill will be our MC.
It's
but thanks.
Bill. Okay, great.
Right. All right, well, thanks very much, Teresa, and let me encourage everybody, we do have some time to take some questions, and let me encourage you to go ahead and put yours in now if you haven't done so already. So the first question is kind of interesting. You know, do you use any state-raised seals on your documents? And I guess either of y'all could answer that question. So, Ron, I think that came in when you were speaking.
Okay, I can take the question. The state of Oregon doesn't require an embossed seal, if that's what the question was about. It's not embossed, it's just a seal, and on our CAD drawings, it could be just a cell that's placed in the CAD drawing, and then in the days of wet signature, we would just sign over the top of it. And in the days of a digital signature, that cell is placed there electronically during the signing process, and it does not have the person's signature. Our statutes here require that it to say across where normally you'd have your signature, it would say digitally signed. And then below the seal or within the seal, it has the registrant's name, etc. So we don't use embossed seals if that's what the question was about.
It was. Basically, that's it. Teresa?
I can also add something to that. When we were in the paper world, we used a lot of seals, the raised seals or the embossed seals. When we decided to go through the electronic signature process, we contacted many of our stakeholders who are using seals. The one that I can think of the most is with the surety companies for bonding our construction contracts. And we found that many people have gone to electronic seals. So if they're required to have seals through their industry and their regulations, they now have electronic seals as well. But we found that that was not a hurdle that we couldn't get over legally within the state of Nevada.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Question that came in actually while you were talking, Teresa. Then I think it was the can you let's see. Hold on a second. Gosh, we're getting so many questions here. I just lost the question. But basically, what's the difference between electronic and digital signatures? And I think Teresa, you could answer it. Certainly, Mauricio or probably Ron too.
Yeah, let me jump in with that one, Bill.
Sure.
So the easiest way to think about this, guys, is that everything's an electronic signature. Anything that attempts to link a signer with what they're signing is an electronic signature, and from that perspective, the laws all make electronic signatures legal. So again, to reiterate the point, you can use most anything, but you want to use something that is secure and keeps you out of trouble. And so for that specific reason, some people will look at a secure electronic signature service like DocuSign. Depending on the functionality requirements, some people will look at digital signature. For many years, digital signature was considered the most secure type of electronic signature. Obviously, that's evolving as the two types of applications get closer together. But at a high level, electronic signature is the catch-all term. Digital signature is a very specific type of electronic signature.
Gotcha.
And I can also maybe add just a little bit to that. We looked at both using digital signature and electronic signature to use the two different phrases, even though they are all electronic signatures. And we were using digital signatures previous to going with DocuSign. And in the procurement process, we found that to be somewhat cumbersome, particularly for our contractors, because they had to, we used third-party authentication. So we went away from the digital signature, particularly in the procurement process, working with our contractors because it was so cumbersome for them, but we use other forms of authentication. So with just the electronic signature, there are many different ways that you can authenticate a signer. And we use a couple of different methods to authenticate a signer, but I know DocuSign has lots of information available around authentication of the signature.
Very good. Very good. Listen, we've had a couple of questions about being able to download the presentation. Yes, you can. It's in the green folder icon at the bottom of your screen. So if you want to download it, that's where you'll find it. So here's the next question. Have the DocuSign solutions, either electronic or digital, been accepted for use by any California public service agencies?
I'll take that one, Bill. This is Mauricio. Please. So really the question here, guys, is a result of the fact that the California Secretary of State has some fairly rigorous requirements around the use of digital signatures specifically. So the short answer there, guys, is that if you go to the Secretary of State site and you look at the approved certificate authorities, DocuSign is on the list. And so we can get into specifics offline, but the short answer is yes, it's an approved certificate authority.
Good deal. So next question is, what kind of authentication options does the SaaS option offer?
Yeah, that's a good question, guys, and that's back to Teresa's point. So since you're sending something out into the ether for signing, obviously option number one is to just rely on the email domain that it's going to. That's not always sufficient. So DocuSign in particular offers several ways where you can double up with a second factor form of authentication. You can use a code, and there are several ways to communicate that code to the eventual signer. And by the way, unless they use the code, they can't even see the document. So you have to input the code first to see the document and then to sign. The code can be provided via SMS text. There's an automated phone service that when they're ready, it will actually call them and provide the code. You can provide it verbally if you're on the phone with them. And the highest level of authentication is knowledge-based questions. We actually contract with LexisNexis to ask questions of the proposed signer before they can view and sign the document. And if anybody's gone through knowledge-based questions, it's like, which of the following was your address in 2014 kind of thing. These are all optional, and so you can pick and choose depending on the risk you associate with the transaction.
Got it. Thanks. Question here for Teresa. Can you elaborate on why it was cumbersome to your contractors, and if DocuSign made the process less cumbersome, how so?
Particularly in time-critical documents. A couple of times we had contractors who their digital certificates had expired, and so they were not able to meet deadlines that were critical to bidding on a project. Just really the basic housekeeping. It was also an additional cost to our contractors because they had to purchase this third-party authentication through the digital process. And having gone, we all just went through the Great Recession, and, contractors were always really kind of screaming anytime we asked them to spend any money other than on procuring work. So it was really mostly housekeeping for our contractors. I don't know about all of your contractors out there, but some of them have a hard time just emailing back and forth. So when they had to get the digital certificates and get them loaded on their computers, and it was just cumbersome for our contractors. So we chose to go away from the digital signature, especially because we were assured by all of our attorneys and by tons of case law out there that through our forms of authentication, the electronic signature is certainly secure and safe and legal. So we chose to move away from it, really just from complaints from our contractors.
Right, right. So here's a question that's very practical, and you know all three of you actually could answer this, but certainly Teresa and Ron, how long did the implementation take for these solutions? Teresa or Ron?
I can start. We started the project. We were directed by our director, Rudy Malfabon, to look into using some sort of electronic signature in February, and we launched our pilot in September of that same year. I do have to tell you, and my apologies to the IT people on the call, but we did all of our pilot and we launched a lot of our solutions without the help of an IT department, with our IT department. As I'm sure most people see, it's very difficult to get IT resources. They're very limited, and so that was one of the reasons why we went with DocuSign, is because it's such an intuitive program, and once you've used it once or twice, you can pretty much start your own solution really very, very quickly. And the longest part of our implementation was really just, you know, making sure all the legal folk, all of our Attorney General's office was comfortable with the process. And then also working with the industry groups, with the surety companies, making sure that, you know, we would have valid bonds at the end of the process. So really DocuSign is such an easy solution to implement. You can, you know, take as long as you want, but we did it in just a few months.
Ron, any thoughts on your end?
Yes. I think we are not fully implemented yet, and we've been at it for some time, but it has nothing to do with the concept of deploying the digital signature piece of the big puzzle. This is all about engineering products and engineering documents and engineering data. And we've had a system where all of our hard copies were wet signed and archived and managed that way. And so to be able to deploy a digital signature solution required to have an engineering data management system in place. And that's a much, much bigger task for us. And so we've been at it for some time. I'm going to say it's been a couple of few years, but the digital signature piece was actually the simpler piece of the big puzzle.
Right, right. One of my favorite questions here, this is, you know, basically a couple of people asked this, what did it take to sell this to your management, this whole concept? I think that's a very valuable answer. Ron, you want to start?
Sure. Well, it was a number of years ago that I wrote a paper on engineering automation. It was meant to be for an internal discussion. And that basically, the paper just described that we've been at automating our engineering since the mid-1980s with the final goal of speeding up the process. But now we wanted to restart, rethink, retool that whole engineering automation process with the goal of having 3D data, and it all being about data, all the way from the planning to the as-building of our construction projects. And so there were many, many pieces to this plan, and in order to get us there, one small piece of it was to deploy digital signatures. So it was basically promoted as a piece of a much larger puzzle, and we had to get laws put into place with the board that regulates engineers and land surveyors before we could do that. So I worked with them a number of years ago and got the laws in place. And so the sale wasn't necessarily on the digital signature piece. It was on the bigger engineering automation environment. And this was something that had to happen to make everything successful.
Right. Teresa?
Well, it was easy for me because the directive came from the top, so that was an easy sell. But I think once you start the process, just send your management team or your executive team a DocuSign envelope to sign. Once they understand how easy it is and how it's going to increase your efficiencies, it's a really very easy sell. I've never had to convince someone to use DocuSign. It's mostly been just showing someone how it works and the ease of using it. So I've never really had to convince anybody. So I suggest you just send someone, if you have any naysayers, send someone a document to sign so they understand how easy it is to use it.
Right, right. Listen, folks, we've got several more questions, and we're just going to go a minute or two past the hour, just to answer a couple of more of these, and know that that all the questions will be in the hands of the speakers, who will get back to you after the event, after this webinar, in case yours did not get answered. So Teresa, what types of post-letting construction documents did you execute in DocuShare? Are the documents linked to a construction project?
We pretty much do everything for our highway construction projects now in DocuSign. So all of the documents are done through DocuSign. We do everything from the contract itself to the NTPs to change orders, all of our approvals from both the department, the governor, the FHWA, all of those things. We do pretty much everything through DocuSign now. So it's a very rare occasion that we actually sign anything on paper anymore.
Gotcha. Ron, is that an appropriate question for you?
I'm not sure how to answer that. I don't think so.
No,
I think
that's fine.
I was
I'm sorry.
specific, Teresa.
It was. So let's go ahead and end this webinar with one last question. Did you go through a formal bidding process to choose a digital signature solution, Ron?
What I'll say is we began with researching and deciding what functionality we wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, we decided that we wanted to be our own certificate authority. So that's what drove us. And so we went looking for a solution that allowed us to buy hardware and software to become our own certificate authority. And
Right.
so it was a fairly narrow selection process to buy what we needed.
Right. Teresa?
So yes and no. We looked at 3 companies. But DocuSign was really the only solution that met our requirements at the outset, from the outset. So we went through kind of a mini procurement process when we brought on DocuSign, and because there was a really low barrier to entry. We used something called a seat license in our pilot, and so if you want to talk to DocuSign, they can explain the difference between all of their programs. But it was really a low barrier to entry, so we did our pilot based just on DocuSign, and then we went through a sole source procurement for DocuSign after to get our enterprise package after we went through our pilot program.
Great. Well, listen, folks, we begged an extra couple of minutes of your time. We appreciate that. We've come to the end. Again, there are questions unanswered that will be sent to the presenters here today. I'd also like to obviously thank Mauricio and Teresa and Ron and our sponsor DocuSign again for their sponsorship of today's event. Please know that the webcast is going to be on demand in the next 2 days at AmericanCityandCounty.com. And most of all, by the way, we'd like to thank you for your time today. This is Bill Wolpin. We look forward to seeing you again for an American City and County webinar.